Hey guys, so today we're going to be taking notes. So you either should have a Google Doc opened, or maybe you have a piece of paper and a pencil. I'm going to reread our passage with the goal of finding examples to support the prompt. So the prompt was the do what. I'm trying to explain how Native Americans got their food, clothing, and shelter. So when I reread today any examples of how Native Americans got their food, clothing, and shelter, I'm going to stop and jot that down. So I'm going to read every paragraph and stop after the paragraph and ask myself, did I find out any examples on how Native Americans got their food, clothing, and shelter? Starting with paragraph 1. The Native Americans of the Southwest used their environment for food, clothing, and shelter. They migrated from Asia thousands of years ago and live in North America today. They live in the southwest region of the United States. The southwest region includes New Mexico and Arizona, and parts of Utah, Nevada, Colorado, Texas, and Southern California, and northern Mexico. The southwest is mostly a low, flat desert. The region has high plateaus. There are some mountains and deep canyons. Rivers are fed by snow melting in the mountains. There are few trees in the region. So after I read a paragraph, I'm going to stop and ask myself, did I find out how Native Americans got their food, clothing, and shelter? No, I have no examples yet, so I'm going to continue reading. Paragraph 2. The Native Americans of the Southwest have lived in the Southwest for hundreds of years. They also made clay pottery. They were among the first people to fire pottery. Firing pottery with coal makes the clay hard and strong. Through their religion, the natives acted as caretakers of the land. They believed that when the land is healthy, the harvest would be good. Throughout the year, the natives prayed and held ceremonies as part of taking care of the land. Modern natives in this area followed many traditions of their culture. Most live in villages of the Southwest. Many continue to take part in their traditional ceremonies. Many Hopi are skilled at traditional pottery, weaving, and jewelry making. Others hold jobs in local companies. Some are teachers who teach their native language in addition to English. So I'm going to come back up here and reread this part about their religion because it talks about their harvest. So I'm going to highlight this for a second. This explains or supports how Native Americans got their food. So through their religion, they believed praying and having ceremonies would get them a good harvest, which means they believed praying and having ceremonies would bring them enough food to eat. So this doesn't really go into detail about what food they ate or what food they planted, but this was a huge part of how they lived. They prayed and had a lot of ceremonies. They thought taking care of the land was really, really important. So I'm going to start reading paragraph 3. So you guys on your paper or your Google Doc, you are taking notes just like I am. You do not have to have complete sentences. These are just caveman style notes. So I'm going to bounce back over to here. They use their environment for shelter. The most common natural resources in the area are clay, rocks, and straw. Since the climate is so warm in the area, the baking of adobe bricks is a simple process. When bricks of adobe made of clay, mud, and straw are placed together, they make clay pueblos. A pueblo is a shelter of natives. Since the climate is so warm, some shelters are found within the cliffs of the Rocky Mountains. Today, natives live in modern houses that have colors that are similar to the land around it. So I'm going to go back to my do what? I have to explain how Native Americans got their food, clothing, and shelter. Well, this whole paragraph was about using their environment for shelter. So they used clay, rocks, and straw to build their pueblos, which was their house. So the warm environment made this really easy to do for them. Another thing that I picked up, because remember they're living in the desert, So I'm going to go back and reread the sentence because it says, since the climate's so warm, some shelters are found within the cliffs of the Rocky Mountains. So if they're in the cliffs of mountains, I wonder if that is a place that they're going to stay warm or stay cool. Because if you're in the hot desert all day, maybe staying in the shade or in some sort of cave inside of like a mountain might provide shelter from shade, from the sun, from the heat. Um, the next paragraph says natives in the Southwest use their environment for clothing. Here we go, we have more examples. Since they grew cotton, it was used in threads that made clothes. Any skins that were gained through hunting would make leggings, loincloth, and moccasins for their feet. Since the climate was so warm, clothes were not always necessary. Today, many Native Americans wear clothes like many people around the country. So again, you're living in the desert, it's super hot. So it's not like you need hats or blankets, but they did grow cotton. So I'm going to write down grew cotton so they could make clothing. They hunted and they used the skin to make leggings, loincloth, and I'm going to write shoes because moccasins are shoes to protect their feet. And I'm going to continue reading. So I learned a lot about their shelter, how they got their clothing. I'm still looking for more details about their food. So we're going to read the last paragraph and then take a couple more notes. They hunted and gathered what they could from the land that they lived on. Since it was so warm throughout the year, land mammals were difficult to hunt and gather, so they relied on farming. Early natives in the area used irrigation, which is a method of watering crops to grow corn, beans, pumpkins, onions, and squash. Corn was a staple, or most common food natives in the area grew: red, blue, yellow, white, and purple corn. They grew enough to store it so it would last all year. They would often make stews. They gathered nuts, seeds, various bulbs, and roots when they were available. Most natives eat modern food today. So I'm going to come back over here to my notes. They could not rely on animals. So think about what you know about a desert. It's deserted, right? There's not a lot of plants, there's not a lot of animals. So they had to farm. So I'm going to write down farm and irrigation is how they got water. So I almost want to read more about how did they irrigate their farms. It doesn't really give us a lot of information, but it looks like they knew what they had to do to get water on their crops. They grew corn. I'm going to put a star next to this one because they said that was a staple, which means that was the most common food they used. Beans, pumpkins, onions, and squash. And they would store it. So I'm going to come back up here. They would store it and it would last them the whole year. Then it says they would gather. So that means they didn't plant this. They would just go out and look for nuts, bulbs, and roots. And it says when they're available. So maybe like different times of the years, there's different plants, right? So maybe they would go out and gather nuts, bulbs, and roots during different parts of the year. So here are my notes, and you should have a piece of paper or a Google Doc that has all of these ideas written down so we're ready for our next part.